After a 6-hour drive, we finally made it to San Diego. We're here to check out a product that hasn't been launched to the public yet, along with talk to a friend of mine who has a few tips for home builders and remodelers. I've learned so much over the years from friends in this space, and I want to share that information to all of you out there. Feel free to check the timestamps in this video and go to the labeled sections you'd like to watch, as this video is a whopping 45 minutes long. Make sure to comment below as we're randomly giving away t-shirts from our merchandise shop as well. Without further ado, let's get into it. What I was calling an island, but it is not an island. We're on the peninsula of Coronado in San Diego. We're here to talk with a good friend of mine named Shane. He builds amazingly high quality homes. Today we're going to go over all sorts of different details, talk about the Zip 2.0 he's using, talk about why he's doing it, because he's not doing it just to look fancy. He's doing it because right over there is the ocean. We are surrounded by water out here. That's why I called it originally an island. And in case you guys didn't know, this episode of On the Road is sponsored by the makers of Zip System and Advantech Sheathing, Huberwood. Thank you guys for sponsoring today's video. And today we're also going to be looking at a product that has never been used in the state of California. Out in the back here, we have a brand new product from Huberwood. You guys are seeing it before anybody else. Can't wait to talk you guys through all these details and more. If you're new here, subscribe button's down below. If you got any questions or comments, drop them down there. Let's get to it. We're out here with Shane to talk about high performance building, talk about the Zip System sheathing, the Advantech, and everything that he's doing. Tell me a bit about yourself. How'd you get into this industry?
Well, where to begin? I kind of grew up, my dad was a bit of a do-it-yourselfer builder. Grew up, learning enough skills at each trade to kind of be familiar with construction and really develop passion for it at a young age, which is what led me to study engineering in college. And probably, if it weren't for the fact that I went into military service, I probably would have ended up in construction a long, long time ago. But kind of took a detour, spent the majority of my adult life in the Navy, and kind of decided when I got out of the Navy, just really wanted to get back to something I was super passionate about. It's kind of just the way my mind works. I kind of noticed that any time I was around a construction project, whether it be a job site or working at my house, it's really when my mind got into the flow state. I would become all absorbed and consumed by the task at hand. I just knew I had a passion for it, and so I kind of tried to follow that path. And residential custom homes just is really something that gravitated towards me, just because you've got, working for clients or someone, there's just this intrinsic value in a home that I don't think you can find in a lot of other structures, commercial structures where people aren't inhabiting it, 24 hours a day for long periods of their life. There's a little bit more passion and emotion that goes into building a custom home, and that was something that really kind of spoke to me. So, I
mean, after all, you're building people's dream homes out here. This area, we've driven around a bit, and like the amount of detail that goes in, just neighbors. And then, I mean, the house that you're building here, the detail is elevated beyond anything that I've seen in Central California. The finishes are insane. Copper gutters on almost everything. Like, copper is the only thing you can use out here, right? Everything else corrodes?
Just about. I mean, there's some protected metals like galvalume and things like that will work, but for the most part, you can't go wrong with copper or stainless. Like we were talking earlier, stuff corrodes here overnight. We're only, a couple hundred yards from the beach, extremely salty, corrosive environment. So yeah, you kind of have to up the game on the level of finishes just to withstand the coastal environment.
So one of the things I was curious about when we came out here, and I asked downstairs, this area is only so big, and they're not making any more property. What's here is here. You kind of went into that a bit. These homes aren't just bought, I mean, you're not buying land and building, right? You're doing full teardowns on everything?
Every house we build is, believe it or not, a full teardown, is kind of demolishing the existing house that was there, regrading the site, making way for a new home.
So I'm curious with that, is this a long-term game for these people? Because obviously, what does tear down go for here?
Millions of dollars, yeah.
So they're buying it for millions, they're tearing it down, they're spending millions to rebuild. Are they ahead?
Typically, yes, believe it or not. I mean,
That's
it's
incredible.
It is incredible. I mean, it's a very unique marketplace here, mostly driven by the geography of it, right? So scarce resource, limited supply. We're not creating any more land in Coronado. And as a result, real estate values just continue to climb year over year over year. The place is as near recession-proof as you can get. And believe it or not, despite how expensive it is on just about every project I build, clients, after making a multi-million-dollar investment in the land and the construction, are still coming out on top, sometimes on the order of magnitude of even more millions.
That's insane.
I
never would have guessed that.
It's a very expensive game to play. You have to have a lot of capital to be able to do so. But there is definitely a macroeconomic kind of financial incentive to do so, because it's a good way to add value to your personal wealth portfolio for sure.
Well, let's head down. We've got Zip 2.0. We've got roof details. You're also using a product that's never been seen before in California.
Huber's new rainscreen.
There we go. Let's check that out.
Alrighty.
All right, I'm Matthew with Huber Engineered Woods. I'm here with Shane from Patriot Builders, and he's using a brand new rain screen on Zip system. Shane, what do you think?
I like it. So I'm no stranger to using rain screens. It's become a standard operating procedure of mine to use a rain screen behind any sort of stucco or stone cladding, any sort of reservoir cladding as they're called.
Right.
And kind of one of the first things that I guess that I'll address is the term rain screen, because within building circles and communities, it can kind of be a bit of a misnomer that people have the impression this is only something that you need to be using when you're dealing with rain, which is totally not the case. In reality, what a rain screen is a drainage and drying gap.
Right.
And it's only going to, the implementation of a drainage and drying gap in certain assemblies is only going to de-risk that assembly for you.
Absolutely.
So it's become a standard operating procedure of mine. I was fortunate enough to work with some of the development team at Huber to be able to kind of put together this product and bring it to market. So I was really stoked to see kind of how it came out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, essentially, we already have kind of what I would say is a bomb-proof enclosure,
Right.
To use Matt Reisinger's terms, in our kind of Zip system with the 2.0. But we have a full stucco house going on here. So every kind of square inch of this house is getting stucco, which, as most people know, stucco absorbs water, right?
Of course.
It doesn't rain here a lot, but actually this past winter, we probably got more rainfall than I've ever seen my entire life living here. But what we do have is a ton of moisture every single day.
Right.
Every night, the marine layer comes in, moisture's condensing all over these houses, and then when the sun goes to dry it out, it's driving all of that moisture inward. So what this product does is it provides a gap behind our stucco to allow all of that vapor pressure to kind of drain and dry. You're eliminating a lot of the hydrostatic pressure off of the Zip system enclosure, And by doing so, in my opinion, you're going to take an enclosure probably, it's hard to quantify, but I would say this is the portion of a building assembly that's going to take a house from 50 years to 100 years. Is really going to extend its lifetime.
Yeah, I've always thought, in traditional assemblies, using a plywood-based product or some type of an OSB product and putting a two-ply product behind stucco, I always wondered how the water escaped from behind it, when the idea is you want stucco to dry out.
So Luke Mesger had a really good demonstration of this that he did with Matt Reisinger before the product was debuted at the building show, where he took a sponge, dunked it in water, wrung it out, to kind of simulate, hey, this is what stucco is like when it takes on water. Right. Why would you want that directly up against your building?
A wood product. Right?
And then you couple that knowledge with, some of the building science information that Christine Williamson is putting out, where she had a really great Instagram post talking about solar vapor drive, where when you've got the combination of that wet sponge up against your building, and then you allow the sun to hit it, it's putting all of the vapor pressure on your building. It's driving it inward towards the building. So in my opinion, there's no reason not to put a rain screen on a house if you're using kind of a reservoir cladding. It is kind of a no-brainer. It's not free to install. There's definitely a cost to it. Okay. But it is, in my opinion, there's no building product that provides a higher return on investment. Yeah.
Is
right?
walking under a ladder bad luck? I have a lot of bad luck. Shane, you've got Zip 2.0 going on here. You are flashing every nail head. There's many reasons why you're using it. You kind of explained it a bit. What is your purpose behind doing this?
I like doing it for the only reason that we're extremely close to the coast, and even galvanized fasteners in time will rust.
Yeah.
If you left an untreated nail out, it would only take a couple days before it starts to break down and rust. So for that reason alone, we want this house to last a long, long time, longer than the corrosion resistance of a galvanized zinc coated nail. So we're hitting every nail head just as kind of that extra layer of protection. It's a very inexpensive, high return detail, if you ask me.
Well, we're on the coast as well. Sometimes we're building close to the ocean, and I've seen it myself. I mean, you could go around any new construction project, you'll see rust running down the edge of the sheathing because they're already corroding. Oftentimes people are using galvanized nails for the bottom plate because it's pressure treated, but once they get onto their sheathing, it's just it's non-coated. So I see that quite a bit. I was curious if this was something you're doing just to stay ahead of the game, but that made perfect sense. You don't want anything corroding, similar to what we've got here, this copper weep screed here. So this obviously doesn't come cheap. I'm assuming you're doing gutters and everything with copper, right?
Pretty much.
What does an upgrade like that cost on a house? What's square footage here?
I have about 3,000 square feet of habitable space under roof between this structure and our carriage house above the garage.
Is this separate rental, just guest space?
No, so in Coronado, you're actually unable to rent properties here on a short-term basis. So they might rent it down the road. I'm not even sure what the legality of that is in this town, but it's more an in-law suite. It's more so that they've got a parent or someone from out of town who can come stay. They've got their own space. It's a very nice to have.
So you're not seeing people put ADUs up and rent out like crazy then?
No, actually in my town, the ADU ordinance is it's a very kind of hot button issue. Given that space is so constrained, there's not a lot of opportunity to add ADUs here. And certainly I think the town is in favor of kind of not turning the local community into kind of more of a short-term rental marketplace. So
I don't blame them.
There is ADU construction, but it's few and far between. It's not as accessible as it is off Coronado.
One thing I noticed right off the bat was you're using a recessed window system. Are you doing a stucco on everything here?
Yes, we are. So the recessed windows is more of an architectural detail to kind of just make it look like recessed windows.
Depth.
Exactly. Give it depth so that our kind of stucco returns right under the windowsill, and kind of, you're exactly right.
This, I've done it before. I'm kind of curious as to know why you use the regular flashing tape versus the liquid flashing. I've done it with liquid flashing and it seems to work, but you're using a 2x6 wall, 2x4 as your recess, correct?
Correct.
So there's a
Correct.
lot of tape that goes into
There's a
flashing
lot.
this.
I'll be honest, like I'm not a big fan of the recessed window detail. We've kind of have a few different approaches depending on where the window is. As you know, the liquid flash is expensive, time consuming.
Yeah.
We self-perform all of our weatherization. So we do have some constraints in the mix, but in this case, we're under a covered overhang.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of exposure to this window, and in this sill in particular, we flashed with just a combination of the regular zip tape and stretch tape at the corners.
Okay.
In a lot of instances, the corners and the really fickle areas were out of liquid flash, either pre or post window installation. But it's kind of one of those things that this is the most critical spot of your kind of water management detailing. So you certainly have to make sure it's done right. I'm not a fan of it for that reason, is that it's almost drawing water into the window. It creates a really cool architectural impact, but
At what cost?
At what cost? And I have kind of as a builder, you have a slightly different value system. You're trying to create durability and longevity. And this kind of window detail certainly works against that.
Yeah.
However, if done right, it can still be a very long-lasting window detail.
I have to ask you, if you were to use one type of flashing for everything, what would it be? Do you enjoy using this traditional? Do you enjoy the liquid flashing? Because I know some people just do everything with liquid.
The liquid flash is certainly the most versatile.
Yeah.
That is the one flashing material you probably could use for everything. But is that practical? Does that make sense from a building sequencing standpoint? It's hard to say. But I do use the zip liquid flash prolifically beyond just for zip weatherization. Same thing with the zip stretch tape. I mean, those are two of the most superior building products.
I love the stretch tape around penetrations. Anytime you have a pipe sticking out, you just fold it in half, wrap it around, you're good to go. Back to the 2.0. Let's say somebody was watching that isn't from a coastal area. They're middle of, let's say, Alabama. Would you recommend doing this? Is this something that you would push for them?
It's one of those things that you certainly don't have to. It's not required. But that could be said of so many other building details that it's a very low barrier to implementation detail that's only going to limit your risk even further. So in that case, it's kind of like if you've got the bandwidth and the availability to do so, why not?
Yeah.
I by default try to be kind of aggressive with my building tactics and techniques and kind of lean more towards on the side of kind of going above and beyond than
take that extra step and show that you care a bit.
Exactly, as opposed to kind of telling myself that, it's not required, so therefore we don't have to do it. Well, there's a lot of things that aren't required, but that doesn't mean we should be doing
What does
them.
it take, though? I mean, it doesn't take all that much time. You're walking around with a putty knife, and I mean, I saw that you guys have, I don't know where it is, you guys have the
cordless,
the cordless
Makita, caulking gun, which is, I mean, it makes it too easy. You put a setting on the cordless gun, and you barely have to pull your finger off the trigger. And if you're doing it with two guys, I mean, you could probably cover a whole house in certainly less than a day. And so
it's a little cost to add.
It's easy enough.
Add
Now,
protection.
also to your point, it really does depend on the climate where you're at. I've got a very specific reason for doing so here.
Yeah, I like that reason because you actually have a reason.
For sure.
Most people, it just seems like they're doing it for, I don't know, to look like they're building better, but does it actually do anything? I like your reason there. We've got this rain screen out here that I wanted to touch base on in just a sec here. What's this been like using a product that hasn't been used before?
A little bit of a challenge, like the implementation of building details and materials that are non-standard is tough. It's kind of what I enjoy about the building process is that it's very entrepreneurial. And if you have that entrepreneurial spirit to kind of go the extra mile and find the building techniques and materials that are better to be building with, and you spend the time and energy and resources to learn how to implement them into your building practice, I think that there's only benefits to be had in terms of the way you're going to be able to grow and build your business. It's my perception that a rain screen is a product that actually goes a really long way. There's a super high return on investment for where we're building. And it's a kind of undiscovered building technique and tactic that, again, has a super high return on investment. The process to implement it wasn't so straightforward, but I've got really great trades that are open to working with new products and materials. So as long as you're willing to spend the time and energy to kind of educate and let people know why you're doing something.
Yeah, they understand it and go with it.
They understand it, go with it. It kind of makes it fun at the same time.
I've said for years now that the people that work for you are a direct representation of you and your company, and I think the products could say the same thing. I feel like the products that you're using here, we drove around and we saw some with just typical OSB up, but when you use a higher grade product, it shows that you care a bit more. You care 15, 20 years from now, as opposed to there's no tailgate warranty. You're not just driving off. You want these homes to last, right?
100%. And I mean, it's a forcing function for me, being that I live here as well. So we're in a super small town. I mean,
you don't want to drive around and think, man, I messed that house up.
No, and I mean, I see my clients like almost every day. Sometimes you can't escape it. It's a good and bad thing at times, but the phrase like, you don't want to shit where you eat, pardon my language, I'm right in it, you know. So as a hometown builder, you kind of have to build to the higher standard because your reputation carries you. Yeah, and certainly to your point, building with better materials, you know, even the public who's uneducated to construction, they can tell. They can see that, oh, just by looking at a house like this and seeing that it's different with zip and the flashing materials, you can tell when something's buttoned up and when it's tight and people care.
It seems like people are doing more research as well into the products that they're putting on their home, and they care about the longevity. They want a product that's going to last for years, and they don't want just a typical home. So I enjoy that. I think the building science world's coming in a little bit more. People are seeing a huge need for zip, and they want to go above and beyond. I mean, if you're going to dump, this is what I tell everybody. The simple cost to upgrade to zip and change the flashing details that you've got is a small number when you think about the grand scheme of things.
Welcome to my project. We're on G Avenue, Coronado. We're about a quarter mile from the beach this way, not far from the historic Hotel Del, about a quarter mile from the main Orange Avenue corridor. I'm building a house here for some really close friends of mine, designed by Christian Rice Architects, designed by South Harlow Interiors. Coastal contemporary style. It's going to be super sleek and sexy on the outside, but I've got some clients that have you know, really invested in building the right way. So we've got some really cool building details going on as well. So why don't you come on inside and I'll give you a quick tour. All right, as you come on through the front door here, we got a really cool arched entry. It's going to be a steel door. It's going in this morning. We are in the living room. This is something that's really cool that you see often here in California, how the house just kind of flows from inside to out. So as you look through, we're kind of looking beyond the dining room and the kitchen. There's a really cool steel assembly going in with French doors in the middle that looks out to a back patio and a swimming pool. We've got a nice TV over a fireplace. There's a really cool glass transom window going between to kind of give some distinction between the rooms. We've got pretty big open floor concept. This is something that's really common out here in new homes in California, maximizing that kind of indoor-outdoor space. Pantry, mudroom off to the side. We're going to have a big kitchen island here, working wall against those windows on that side. Really cool stained grade oak beams going in the ceiling. This is kind of where we'll set a traditional dining table. And it'll be really cool in the summertime as these doors are open. You just kind of connect the inside from the outside, so this really just feels like one big room. So this is a dining nook over here. So it's going to have bench seating all around. You can kind of see windows on three sides. We'll have a nice decorative fixture in the middle. So this is where you'd kind of have less formal gatherings where kids can do their homework, or you can kind of sit down, play cards with friends or something. So formal dining table behind you over there, Matt. And this is kind of a cool little bonus dining nook, we're calling it, that will be tricked out. It'll definitely be kind of a feature of this space. So as you come this way up the steps, one of the things you'll start to see is the spray foam at the roof. So one of the things that's become another standard operating procedure of mine is to install 2 inches of closed cell spray foam at the roof, because I like building sealed, conditioned attics. So that all of our mechanical systems are inside the thermal envelope. And kind of pro tip for other builders and remodelers out there, do yourself a favor and bring your spray foam contractor in right after framing. I made the mistake of spray foaming the very first house I built after MEPs, and it just kind of makes a mess, goes everywhere. Do yourself a favor, get it in right after framing before you run all of your pipes, ducts, wires. Just makes for a much cleaner install. We also run that under the stairs to kind of soften the stairs. Really cool detail in my opinion. So as you get up to the second floor, it's 3 bedrooms up here. We've got a master suite off to my right, kind of laundry room right in the center of the second floor, and 2 bedrooms. They've got 2 kids. Each one of these bedrooms is full en suite, so it has its own kind of bathroom and shower. A couple cool features that we've done up here. We've got kind of a partition wall that divides the laundry room from the master bedroom. So you'll notice as you come in closer, we've got a stagger stud framed wall. It's a detail I've done a number of times before where you've got 2x6 bottom plate with 2x4 opposing studs. So effectively what it looks like is a wall that's framed on 8-inch centers. But this stud is not connected to the shear panel on the other side, nor will the drywall and shear panel on this side be connected to the interior wall. So once we run our rock wool insulation and fill this, you essentially have minimal surface area contacting from one side or the other, which is going to really prevent the vibration and sound from laundry appliances from transmitting through to the bedroom. We've got the master suite back here. Nice big vaulted ceiling, about 15-foot ridge. Master bath off to the left, master closet off to the right. We're facing the front of the house, which is really cool. The sun sphere kind of comes across the sky in this direction. So all these windows up here are going to let in a ton of natural light. There'll be some really cool built-in cabinetry under this window. It'll have a really cool sight line through this pocket door into the master bath. Ultimately a really cool kind of master suite. Pretty good size of the house too. So you'll notice we've got Advantech floors. We're running the 1.1/8 Advantech subfloor, which is kind of one of the best building products in my opinion. We've screwed it as opposed to nailing it. I prefer screws. I just feel like you get a much better uplift strength out of it. Of course, using the Advantech glue, but the 1.1/8 thickness in particular just does a ton of the heavy lifting in terms of preventing sound transmission down to the floor below. So it's become a standard of mine. Even when the engineering drawings don't call for it, I think it is, well worth the additional spend, which is marginal, to get a really good, soundproof, dense, flat, and kind of sturdy floor. So there's a number of things that we do to prevent sound transmission from a second floor down to a first floor below. First and most important in my opinion is kind of the 1.1/8 Advantech. Just the density of the material alone is going to stiffen up the floor and prevent a lot of that sound transmission. But oftentimes we might even spray foam the underside of the floor system to really air seal it. We'll oftentimes fill the floor system with rock wool to balance that cavity out. And then before we install our wood floors above, a lot of times we're using an acoustic underlayment, a product called Acousticork. It's about a 1/4-inch underlayment under the engineered hard floor. So depending on the house and the budget and the client's sensitivity to sound transmission and how much they value a nice quiet floor system, the combination of those 4 details, if fully implemented, just really makes for a floor where you won't hear a thing. So come on this way. We've got 2 bedrooms adjacent to each other. My clients here have 2 small kids, so 2 girls in this instance, that they're actually going to be sharing a room over here. We'll do some really cool built-in bunks. As you come through, there's almost like this entry vestibule area where we're going to maximize the space in this closet with some built-in dressers here. So you'll kind of open these closet doors. You've got dressers for each of the kids with shelf and pole above it. Coming into this room, we've got a pretty cool vaulted ceiling where they'll have a nice big bunk system in this corner with 2 queens. So their kids are going to get to share a room for however many next couple years, and they can use this spare bedroom as a guest bedroom. 2 bathrooms, full en suite, so really nice spacious rooms. Good way to lay out this second floor. So if you look up in the ceiling mat, well, it's actually the attic space above us, you'll notice we've got a dedicated ventilation system, an ERV. Some of you guys might be familiar with what that is, maybe you're not. But essentially when you build a really airtight house, you need to have a way to ventilate it. So rather than allowing air to infiltrate through random interstitial gaps and cracks, this is a dedicated appliance that's going to take stale air from inside the house and send it out the roof, and then it's going to take a fresh air supply in through the roof, run it through a really high efficiency filter, and distribute it to all of these bedrooms upstairs. So that machine will run 24/7, depending on how we set it. But at all times, this house is going to be supplied with fresh filtered air so the clients can control it on their terms, on demand. I tell my clients all the time, if you value the food you eat and the water you drink, you should 100% value the air you breathe. And air doesn't kind of filter itself and make itself fresh on its own. You have to have a plan. It starts with your building enclosure and incorporating something like that. So you'll notice kind of as we move from one bedroom to the next, we've got that same stagger stud framed wall, 2x6 bottom plate, 2x4 walls on 16-inch centers that oppose one another so that any noise from this bedroom doesn't very easily transfer to the bedroom next to us. Of course, we'll be insulating our interior walls as well. And then by the time you sheet it with drywall on both sides, it makes for a really soundproof interior wall from bedroom to bedroom. So as you come in here too, Matt, you'll see we've got a cool ceiling detail where actually we've got kind of a recessed 2x6 soffit all around, which is something we kind of put together on the fly. I took my clients through another house of mine, and they saw a detail in the entryway where we actually put wall covering, like wallpaper, on the ceiling. And they kind of thought, hey, how could we incorporate that into our house? So we chose this bedroom to basically drop a little 2x6 soffit all around where we're going to have some kind of wall covering to be determined that's going to go up in this inset. Makes for kind of a really cool low-cost accent as opposed to just kind of painting in an accent color. So one of the things you'll notice when we wire a house, we kind of always give ourselves large loops before we terminate, a receptacle in a junction box or a switch. I can't tell you how many times I've had to relocate a switch or a junction box. And as soon as this wire is pulled and cut, it's not getting any longer. So most of why we do that is so that we have the ability to kind of move and manipulate things, especially as design details unfold. And we might have, a desk or something that's going here where we have to move this from one stud bay to the next. As soon as we find ourselves in this position and we have to make any changes without some kind of additional slack, we're really kind of limiting ourselves to make some of those modifications. So if you build for long enough, you are bound to have an instance where a drywall contractor or finish carpenter or cabinet setter ends up putting a nail or a screw in either your drainways vent system, your water supply system, or a gas line. Those can be really costly errors if not caught soon enough. So one of the things that we do is we're now through our rough plumbing inspection, we've got our gas line. This is a gas line feeding our dryer. End of the line here where we've got a pressure gauge on it. So we want to keep our gas system completely charged all the way through finishes. We're not connected to our meter. So that way, if there was a nail spike or a screw spike, you're not going to be leaking gas into the house. We're just pressurized with air right now. But the same thing goes with our domestic water supply. We've got a gauge out where the service entrance on the house is, not connected to our meter in the street yet. So if there is a leak, it's not going to just continue feeding water into the house overnight. But it's really important to make sure all of your systems stay charged. You keep gauges on them. You keep a watchful eye on them, and if you need to, just kind of put a piece of tape on the wall, document the pressure, the date, track it over time. Be sure to kind of take a look at it after each and every week or so goes by. That way, if something did happen, you can kind of easily backtrack to what it might have been. Where was work taking place? What install just happened where a screw might have hit a pipe? Another thing that's a really good idea to do that we do here is we 3D photo shoot the whole house before we insulate and drywall. We've actually got a 3D photo shoot coming up this Friday. It will give you a look at everything in the wall so that if you do, unfortunately come across one of those errors where something is ruptured, you can kind of take a look without having to do a ton of demo to get after something. So we'll step on out back here into the backyard where smaller lot, but we were able to make the most of it. There's actually a construction project going on next door. We've got a pool and spa here. We kind of framed a temporary plywood deck over it just to give ourselves more storage space. And back here is our detached two-car garage with a carriage house above it. So you can kind of see the set of stairs where my stucco contractor is working. That leads up to this carriage house that's essentially a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom with a small living room space that counts as habitable square footage and is included in that 3,000 square foot metric I gave you earlier. One detail you wanted to call out, Matt, is in the process of installing this new zip rain screen, the specifications only call for it to be cap nailed at 24-inch centers, 24 inches horizontally, 24 inches vertically. However, we have 16 on-center framing, so when we can, we try to stick to the layout of the studs so that we know all of our cap nails are actually getting into a framing member versus in the field of a stud bay where we've got refrigerant lines, water lines, drain lines. Even though the cap nails aren't that long, low risk of it puncturing something, it's just kind of best practice, in my opinion, to stick to the layout of your framing, and we can identify where those framing members are so that we know all of those cap nails are getting embedded. Certainly, by the time they add lath to this, they're going to just plow a bunch more staples right into that rain screen and right into the siding. But when and where we can control it, it's my preference that we stick to the on-center layout. So there's a bit of scaffolding in the way. We're going to have to monkey around, but we've got, I'm going to bang into the door here. 2-car garage. The way that most of the main city of Coronado is set up is that there's alleyways that run down the center of every city block. So we've got our street frontage out here and an alleyway that runs behind. So most people design their garage to the back where you've got 2-car exit to the alley. Nothing super fancy, more of a standard 2-car garage, but it's where all of the alleyways in Coronado is where you bring in all of your city utilities. So our electric's coming from this back corner. We got gas inside. So we're having to plan for a lot of our major utility service entrances to the property back here. So we've got our main electric meter panel. We've got gas on the wall right behind you, Matt, where all of our pool equipment's going to be laid out. Yeah, so it's a 400 amp service. And really what I found is that we would probably get by with a 200 amp main meter panel, but there's so many circuits in these houses that you become limited on breaker space, particularly when you incorporate solar and some of the battery infrastructure that goes along with it. It's kind of almost no additional cost in terms of 400 amp main meter panel to 200 amp. So I typically always end up with a 400 amp main meter service panel just because you've then got all of the additional breaker space. You're not constrained. You can have multiple sub panels throughout the house or garage or carriage house, particularly in properties where you've got multiple structures. It just gives you a lot more freedom of movement in your electrical distribution system. So coming up this way, I'll take you up to the carriage house. Just watch your step. So we are right now in what's referred to as a carriage house here in Coronado. So it's essentially an in-law suite above the garage. We're in the living room portion of it. There's a single bedroom back here with its own bath. Really cool, nice to have spaces so that you could host parents or guests or you name it for an extended period of time without them, kind of stepping all over your toes in your main residence. This is one of the few times in the past few years I've run into designs that called for 2x4 exterior wall construction. It's been a long time since I've seen that. Most of everything I deal with is 2x6 wall construction. But something that's a really good practice, I think, to get into is to not insulate these walls until you've allowed the stucco crew to go ahead and apply all of the metal lath on the outside of the building. So keep your water pressurized, keep your gas lines pressurized, keep your drain weight vest system pressurized. Let these guys plow the 1,000 staples that they're going to put into the exterior of this house. Make sure none of your systems have been compromised, and then we can go ahead and insulate these cavities. Thanks for coming out, Matt. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming all the way down to San Diego to visit me. I'm Shane Durkin from Patriot High Performance Homes. If you guys are in town, feel free to stop by any Patriot job site where you see the banner on the construction fence and hit me up. I can be found on Instagram at BuildPatriot. Give me a shout as well. Looking forward to seeing this video out there. For those of you thinking about getting into construction, certainly the lower youth, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I encourage you to really explore it. It's a highly rewarding career field, especially if done the right way. And hope you guys all stay happy and healthy out there. Take care.